So here in the New England FAASTeam, just a little bit of the plugging to get involved in the WINGS program and other things, but all of us operate on the promote, educate, improve with general aviation. We look at ourselves as ombudsmen to the general aviation pilot to help you learn how and why the FAA does what it does. And the FAASTeam program managers from the various offices are here tonight. We have Dan Carter and Rob Leonard from the Bradley FAASTeam. You guys want to say hello?
Hi, Stephen. Dan Carter here from Farmington, Connecticut. It's very warm, and looks like I just saw some lightning outside and heard some thunder, so hopefully I'll stay connected. I'm looking forward to tonight. We all are human beings, have to deal with other human beings, and
Yes.
I found this topic very interesting. I think the folks will find it interesting tonight, so I'm happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, and we're going to task you with some input later on, definitely there, Dan.
And yep, sure, Steve. My name is Rob Leonard. I'm the Airworthiness FAASTeam Program Manager for the Bradley FAASTeam, Dan's partner. And I'm down in Niantic, Connecticut, and our AC in our condo bit the dust. And it is smoking in here tonight. I'm glad my camera's not on. You'd see drips of sweat coming off my brow. But anyway, It's great to be here with y'all, and this subject is just something that I think is very important also. And I know Steve's prepared a really good presentation tonight to be shared with all. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And then on the operations side, out of Portland, Maine, and then myself out of the Boston offices, we've worked together for years. So that's actually part of the reason why you see this picture of us here flying together. Myself, I'm out of the Boston FAASTeam, and then my counterpart out of the Portland, Maine FAASTeam. And actually, a big part of this is he has done this same type of topic for training with safety reps in the past. And that was one of the catalysts that led us to doing this webinar, this topic. But you want to say hello, John?
Sure, Steve. Hello to everybody. John Wood from Portland, Maine FAASTeam. Glad to have you with us tonight. And yeah, in that photo, Steve and I are smiling because we're out flying. And this is a great topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. I don't know where else it has been talked about, but I haven't seen it out there. So I think it's a little bit unique, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Thanks for being here.
And then on the airworthiness side, out of Portland, Maine, we have John Bell. John, you want to say hello?
Well, hello, everybody. And it's mirror what everybody else said. It's good to be here tonight. Looking forward to this presentation. And yeah, I'm on the airworthiness side up in Portland, Maine, and we're here to serve. If you have any questions or if we can help you, be sure to contact us. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close down my webcam now. No need for you to continue to see my face, but just so that you know we are here and we are live. Looking forward to actually here very soon. We've started to see some of you in person, and we're looking forward to doing that more. Few quick little housekeeping items. WINGS credit, I will get uploaded in the next few days. The Boston FAASTeam YouTube channel. We are recording this, and we put most, but not necessarily all, but most of our recorded webinars up on there in case you have some friends that may have missed it. Also, do think about some of the FAASafety.gov courses that are there. We do have some handouts this evening. There are two of them. One of them you're going to see directly in reference to the slides, the Aviator's Code of Conduct. Another one is an article written by Jason Blair, former Executive Director of National Association of Flight Instructors. That's where he and I first met, but he had written an article on this subject just about 2 years ago for the FAA Safety Briefing magazine. And as I did mention, the FAASTeam, the FAA safety team, is switching to a new format of software for the webinars. As a result, we're likely going to bypass our July 2021 monthly webinar that we do on the New England FAASTeam on the last Tuesday of every month. And as I mentioned on the Boston FAASTeam YouTube channel, you probably can catch a recording here after about a week. And we'll do a little bit of promotion for the FAASafety.gov that probably led you here. But our big thing is we want you to be a proficient pilot. And we want you to be doing annual checking, maybe something like the wings program, but an important part, which is probably going to come up a few times this evening, is are you part of an organization where you have the ability to be your brother's or sister's keeper, and the same for others, to help you be as safe and the best pilot that you can be. And you can always use the wings program, and we also have wings pros out there that can help you get started in that program if you just search under Wings Pro on FAASafety.gov. And for the Wings program, we want to thank you for joining us for part one, which is just like what we're doing this evening. It's one half of the program, which is the knowledge. There's 3 credits you need. There's knowledge subject 1 on aeronautical decision making, knowledge subject 2 on primary factors in runway safety, primary factors of accidents, and knowledge subject 3, which you need 1 credit of, just like the others, is an elective, which you'll be getting for tonight. But there's also the flight portion of it, which you'll see me here with an instructor doing that a few years ago. You need 3 credits in flight also for airplanes. And most other categories too. Flight subject number 1 covers takeoffs, landings, and go-arounds. Flight subject number 2, slow flight stalls, basic instrument procedures. And flight number 3 covers airport operations. So, overview of tonight, some of the things we're going to cover. The wording may look a little bit different from what you see here, but we're going to talk a little bit about risk, some different types, which you haven't heard from FAA publications, but we'll talk about that and the impact on others, why we take risks, more so as humans, but also as pilots, attitudes and conduct of us as pilots, and the bad apples and mavericks that may be out there or that we may be dealing with, or may even be us. Communication, how important it is, and what I would even call the escalation of communication. And then the last half tonight, we're going to take a look at some scenarios to see how that works out for everybody. So when I talk about risk, I'm going to talk about a few different types of it and to think about it in a little bit different. The first one is kind of perceived risk. And this is when somebody, whether yourself as a pilot or even others around you, perceive that there is risk, but because of a lack of knowledge or ignorance, or not in a bad way, but just not knowledgeable about it, there is not really a whole lot of risk. And sometimes you may be dealing with that, is you may have people that think doing something is unsafe and it's taking on a lot of risk. A classic example of that is we all know people that are deathly afraid of flying in perfectly safe, capable aircraft in good times. Just for whatever reason, they have a phobia or something else, and they have a very heightened level of perceived risk. Next step on it to talk about is societal risk. And this is something to think about. We talk about it with instructors quite often. We even deal with it as aviation safety inspectors. But we talk to instructors about this where, the pilot society looks at something you may do and may not necessarily think it's the best thing, that it has more hazards associated, has a higher level of risk associated with it. And, this is the story of, well, this instructor did that, or this DPE did that. I don't think that is right. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, just to recognize that within our group of pilots, sometimes even if it's a perfectly safe operation and we've taken a lot of mitigations to reduce the hazards and risks, somebody may not be knowing of that and will think, wow, Joe is an unsafe pilot for this reason. There's legal risks to think about. That's kind of like, for the most part, breaking federal aviation regulations, and the risks associated with that usually are measured in terms of what is the burden upon the individual or the entity, the operator. And usually you're looking at that in terms of financial risk, whether it be fines or costs of something, or even in worst case scenarios, the operation from a legal perspective could end up costing somebody their job with it. And then there's also the physical risk. We in the FAA, we tend to focus in on the legal and the physical risk to it. And really on the physical side, what we're most interested in is the risk to the others around you. Whether it's immediate, the family you're carrying in the aircraft with you, or your friends, or it's the people outside of you on the ground and the risk that you may have with that. You can see the big difference in that. When you look at the regulations, when you look at single seat aircraft operations, you'll notice that the rules are nowhere near as extensive as they are when you're carrying passengers. And then even when you get into larger aircraft operations, even under Part 91, move up into larger corporate jets or something, we have additional Part 91 regulations. And then when you're doing something for money, where there's an exchange of goods or services in aviation for consideration with job or money, that has an even higher awareness to the FAA. And boy, especially if you're introducing risk to the public on the ground that has not agreed to be associated with your flight operation, they just happen to be bystanders, that is something that really, really does catch the FAA's eyes. Now, we talk about that. Our challenge as FAASTeam program managers, we probably deal a lot with the societal and legal types of risk that people end up dealing with and talking about. And when a pilot, might end up doing something a little bit differently, this comes from a different program that I end up doing that is called Why Good Organizations Have an Accident. NASA years ago, back in the 70s, had come up with what they were calling the P's of flight deck operation, but looking at an organization down to what happened in the aircraft, even using the checklist, and talking about what is the purpose of the flying, what is the philosophy behind the organization, what policy they have, usually associated with regulations, what procedures do they have in terms of how is it that you're going to do something. You're probably taught your procedures a lot by flight instructors. And then what happens in practice? Does it actually match the procedure, or does it deviate off somewhere else? And, we kind of talk about this, and this is joking, but there is a truth to this, is at the highest level, we talk about what's the purpose of your organization, or even if you're a general aviation pilot out there on your own, what is the purpose of your flying? What is it that you want to accomplish? And, you'll see T-shirts with this and everything else out there about the FAA mission statement, where the running joke has been for years, we're not happy until you're not happy. But I have to agree with some people, is there probably is. That joke has come about because, like any joke, it may have a little bit of truth associated with it. And if you've been an FAA inspector for many years or worked with the FAA for many years, you probably know historically FAA inspectors were pretty much almost trained to respond no, unless you've met all the requirements directly as they're laid out, matched each and everything, even if they don't necessarily align with what you want to accomplish or in a safe manner, i.e. you have an alternate manner to it. And what is great is over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe even a bit more, is the FAA philosophy has changed, and you've even seen our regulations. I was talking to someone today about the changes to FAR Part 23 on small airplane certification, where now the thing that FAA inspectors are trained the most is, hey, let's keep it in a safe manner, but how is it that we can work to get out there to reach yes, to make things happen for people. And that's what we're really trying to look at. But in reality, you'll find the FAA purpose is written into US code. It is defined basically by our lawmakers for us, and it's to promote the safe flight of civil aircraft. That's what we end up focusing on in air commerce. And as a general aviation pilot, you might kind of catch this a little bit, is occasionally, I know those of us in general aviation may feel a little bit overlooked by the FAA, in not a bad manner, but that maybe we can't have things done quite as fast or as often as we want. And the reason why is the FAA, with what resources it has, it is descripted by law, the US code, to focus in on the air commerce. Now, at the opposite end of the spectrum, and these are just samples from that program I was telling you about, you take a look at the ultralight pilot, out there flying an ultralight vehicle, not an aircraft. Why are they doing it? Their reasonings behind it are minimum cost, or you'll hear them say no regulations, no training requirement, no license, cheap aircraft, and everything. But this is something I want you to be thinking about. And also, when you talk to other pilots, maybe try to get them to explain to you, what is it that they're trying to accomplish with their flying? We point this out to flight instructors all the time when they work with students, is, take the time, sit down and figure out what is your purpose behind all of this. And you can buy a t-shirt just like this that says to fly or not to fly. What a silly question. And that's how most of us in general aviation probably do feel. But each one of us does things a bit differently for some reason. I'm sure there are some Baron, Bonanza, Mooney pilots out there, Cirrus, that use it, for corporate travel. That's not the type of flying that I do currently in my life. So the purposes are different, and our actions may be a little bit different as a result. And some things that I do may look very risky and hazardous to those that are flying for business, or vice versa. And that's something we need to think about when we're looking at or dealing with other pilots. All of that being said, though, what it really does come down to, and this is the case in aviation, is we are lucky. It's everybody I meet in aviation. It's one of the great things I think about having what I consider the best job in the FAA as the FAASTeam program manager, is in reality, almost every single pilot you meet really is oriented in trying to do the right thing. I mean, think about all of those hangar debates that have occurred at all of those airports over all of the years about the meaning of specific rules, and what's right and what's wrong. That's what all of that debate is associated with, is these are the people, your fellow pilots, that are really trying to do the right thing, and trying to help others understand, promote aviation, all of that. So we are lucky, it's the 99% versus the 1%. Are there some bad apples out there? Yes, there are. We've seen them. I hate to say it happens with the FAA. We get to see a lot more of the bad apples than probably anybody else in the aviation industry. But it doesn't mean that everybody, even everybody we talk to, is doing it wrong or not right. Truly 99.99% of the pilots out there are trying to do the right thing. They just may occasionally need a little bit of help with it. And, you look at all sorts of things that we have in the FAA. We talk about the hazardous attitudes. That's an example of how, people may end up reacting in a way to a hazard or a risk that is not necessarily the best thing out there. We probably all know pilots that express some of these hazardous attitudes, if not all of them. we probably also, at least some point in our training, our time, even circumstances of us flying, is seen one, if not all, of these in our own flying. You know, I can look back in many scenarios where, yeah, I probably, as a pilot, have not done the best thing because maybe I was expressing a little bit of a hazardous attitude. Promoted by the FAASTeam, and has been for years, is what's known as the Aviator's Code of Conduct. And you can see these on the secureav.com website. These have been created by safety reps actually around the country. I know a few people that have been involved in writing these, I should say. And you can see they're very narrowed down, or can be very narrowed down to individual groups, whether it be like pilot examiners or seaplane or even UAS operators out there and aviation maintenance technicians. We have advocated for people to give consideration to these. These are not necessarily like rules to live by, but if you take a look at the code of conduct and think about how you behave, what you try to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and what you're looking for in the other pilots that you're sharing the airport and the airspace with, there is some great information out there for you. These are really terrific to sit down and discuss on that rainy day, or just to sit down in a quiet place, read and think about it. And they cover, you know, all of these areas, you know, helping with the safety of passengers and the people on the surface, you know, what is your training and proficiency, use of technology, and your advancement and promotion of aviation. And you dig down a little bit deeper into some of those subject areas, and you'll see, you know, what it talks about and things to think about is recognize like the moral responsibility to promote safety among your fellow pilots. You know, you're all here tonight doing this safety presentation to learn a little bit more about how you can help and promote aviation. I bet you know some people at your airport that need this more than you. And, you know, it doesn't hurt. Invite them to a safety topic or safety seminar. Recognize that your actions reflect upon the entire aviation community. You know, that's a public relations type of thing. We talk about the rogue pilot. One of the types of rogue pilots we end up dealing with are people that do just, you know, break the regulations by buzzing, or, you know, or flying low over the beach this time of year, stuff like that. You know, and that has a bad reflection on the entire public and on what you do. You know, never subject others to risks you would not prudently take, and plan your flights accordingly. This is one we'll talk about much further today, is seek to resolve any disputes quickly and informally. And for ourselves, you know, each of us, and this is for some of us, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it is exceptionally important, is invite constructive criticism from your fellow aviators and instructors, and be willing to provide the same when asked, is we can all help each other be better pilots out there. So who is the rogue pilot? You know, well, we kind of joke about this, is if you don't know, it just might be you. You know, and Dan and I were joking about this, but I have a picture here of John and Martha King from years ago, because they are two individuals, they've written about it very much, where, you know, all of us make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes, and hopefully we can help others learn from our mistakes. You know, we don't always exercise the best judgment or take unneeded, you know, or avoid unneeded risks. We're human. It does happen. But what is important whether it be for us as a pilot and or the people we deal with, is we do need to start having that discussion about hazardous attitudes, risk and hazardous identification, mitigation. You know, a big part of being the professional pilot and best pilot you can be is learn from your mistakes and then adjust your tolerance and mitigation and increase your knowledge and skill, you know. So it can happen. I'm sure there are times where it probably has been me in things that I have done in the past. You just have to be willing to listen, adjust, and learn. We all make mistakes is what it comes down to. You know, and Hollywood has portrayed this too. You know, we say jokingly, but back at a time when I was going to college in an aviation program, I think it was a prerequisite to your freshman year is you had to have the soundtrack to Top Gun. And, you know, the word Maverick alone brings forward just certain images to us where, you know, Hollywood may portray going against the rules and all of that. But the thing there is, especially in the high energy environment of aviation, is if it ends up going unchecked, it may end up getting worse and worse and worse. And this can be the individual, the rogue pilot as we talk about them. It can even be a group or an organization. And this is something else to think about in our flying, and whether it be in ourselves personally or, you know, in organizations in aviation. Are we unknowingly supporting the mavericks that are out there? You know, you take a look, and everybody probably, at least through Hollywood or other experiences, know of, you know, that professional airline pilot and the image that they portray and always working to make the right decisions. And then the contrasting part of that is the fly-by-night pilot. You know, sometimes whether it be jokingly cargo operators or whatever else it may be. But if it's going unchecked, all that's going to happen is there's going to be an underlying support for those actions. And this is where we need to start thinking about communicating that more. And us here in the FAA, I mean, all of us as FAASTeam program managers know this. We've probably all seen accidents where we knew the pilot or the operator, and, you know, and when the accident happens, we're like, yeah, I could see that one coming. Or maybe even we don't know it, but we start peeling back the layers in the accident investigation, and we start looking at it, and we're like, ooh, others either knew or should have known, but just didn't speak up. And this is something that you're never going to see descripted in the accident reports. You know, rarely will the NTSB come forward and say that sort of thing. But as an accident investigator, aviation safety inspector, when you look at our accidents, most of them are not a giant surprise to us in the FAA, because we've either known the operation or operator, the pilot, or we did not know about it, but we started digging in and saw that there were a lot of circumstances in the history that, you know, should have highlighted this in the past, i.e. there's always more to the story. I mean, have you guys seen things like that as aviation safety inspectors?
Oh yeah, Steve. You know, over the course of my career, I sure have people that you know, they get involved in an accident or an incident, and you either know that there's a little bit of a history there, or, you know, you're talking to somebody else out in the field who says, oh yeah, I knew that this person was heading in that direction, and usually they're fairly well known.
Yeah, we see that. I mean, John and I and others, we've talked about the accidents within the office in a professional manner. And what this has brought us to is to think about this is, as your fellow pilot, you really are your brother's or sister's keeper. It really helps is if you recognize an unsafe situation, you have the responsibility, all of us have that responsibility to communicate it. And the question is going to be, how do you communicate that and what's the best way? But this is those basic tenets of the safety management systems that you'll see the FAA talking about. What it comes down to really is the question.
Stephen,
Yes.
Dan, I'll just jump in and say, I agree with what John was saying. Specifically, as you said that, I was thinking of an instance where it was the case of a gentleman that was getting older, and when to hang it up, and how to exit gracefully, or step back a little bit gracefully, and so when unfortunately it turned into an accident investigation, and so many people came forward and said, yeah, we were worried about that, we were and some people didn't say anything, some people did, and but it was an interesting situation, and it definitely was exactly like you were talking about, like, oh, this has been going on for a while, and people were aware of it, but unfortunately.
Yeah, and we got to think about the impact of that. You have that, it's the impact on the pilot, the impact on the pilot's family with it. If they're part of a club or an organization, the impact that it may have on that entire club or organization, with everything. What it does to the aircraft too. We only have a certain number of aircraft out there, folks. If we keep breaking them, we're sure breaking them at a much greater rate than we are making them. And it just has an impact on the future of aviation, the more and more that we end up doing that. So it does, it brings up, we are the keepers of all of ourselves with it. That's probably one of the best things, as I was saying, is aviation does exceptionally well. I got to compliment everybody, does exceptionally well at regulating itself. But we do have circumstances where we see some things going on. And the question is, where do we communicate that when we do see it? What is the best avenue to follow? And how do you communicate it? Is what is the best tact to use? And other factors, and all of those are soft skills. I'm nowhere near an expert at them, but I think I can help tonight just get you thinking about that, and maybe opening up your mind to having a conversation with the fellow pilots you interact with the organization you belong to, like a flying club, FBO, whatever else it may be. And if you're out there completely on your own as a general aviation pilot, to advocate getting involved in a group so that you have, some of your brothers and sisters out there looking out for you too. When you take a look, you see something going on, some things that really should cross your mind. Does it require immediate action? i.e., is this something that can hurt somebody right now, and do you need to do something about it right now? Maybe you're going to have a discussion with the individual on your own. What is your background or repertoire with the person? How well are you able to talk to them? Not all of us are good at talking to other personality types. It does happen. We're all human. We may inadvertently not communicate well with others. We may even have personality traits that will come out that may be bothersome to others, or in others we see personality traits that are bothersome to us. And that's something we need to think about, and how do we end up approaching that? For that rogue pilot out there, is there a history of unsafe actions? You know, is this something that's reoccurring, or is it something that we're just looking at once? With it, i.e., are they learning or are they not? Inability to communicate with the individual in the future, you know, maybe you're never going to see the fellow pilot again, or they're departing the fix, whatever you want to call it, you know. And then another thing is direct interaction. Do you end up flying with them? You may not be aware, but almost every Part 121 air carrier out there has what we call the do not pair list, is where they recognize, guess what? Not everybody gets along personality wise. And some people may be a little bit rough around the edges for some other personality types. So there usually is what's called a do not pair list, where, you know, for don't put Joe with Jim. They just don't end up getting along too well or whatever. You know, that is used by organizations too, to kind of recognize maybe there is somebody that they're having an issue with that is out there a little bit on the rogue level. You know, and think about this at FBOs or flying clubs. Is there individuals that people try to avoid, try not to fly with? That usually is a good clue about something, and maybe something to start considering for future action. Now, the resources that you have for the communication, and this is basically in an escalating level, is the best thing. We always like to see this type of communication occur at the lowest tier level. And if you can, is communicate directly with the individual. You know, hopefully you have that type of relationship where you can say, hey, Joe Pilot, you know, what were you thinking when you did this? You know, to have that open communication, to be able to discuss the issue back and forth with it. Maybe a mentor, you know, somebody that you know they look up to with it. That's the case. Many times we have DPEs that end up serving in this function within all of our FAASTos, you know, our mentors to some of the flight instructors or whatever. And if somebody maybe not even maybe at a student level is not comfortable, maybe they'll talk to the DPE or something like that about it. You know, is there a mentor available? And all of us should be seeking a mentor and also be willing to act as a mentor for our fellow pilots. The more we do that, you know, the better off we're going to be being our own, you know, brothers and sisters keepers there. Maybe an instructor, talking to an instructor about it. Sometimes you might need to talk to the club organization or safety officers, you know, in those cases where you see somebody has a history of this. And especially if you see those circumstances where, you know, multiple people do not want to fly with them, that sort of thing. Maybe it's on your airport and it's a problem with a fellow tenant on the airport and how they operate. You might want to speak to airport management about them. Yes, I hate to say, but they will tell you a lot of airport managers end up, you know, having to work some in this type of capacity, end up having discussions as a little bit of a mentor with some of the pilots on there. One of the terrific resources that is available out there is a safety rep. FAA safety rep. We probably have a few on here tonight. We have them scattered throughout all of New England. And I even know, like here in Boston, what I'm trying to do with the FAASTeam is working to try to get a safety rep available at each airport in our district, along with trying to get as much as possible a safety rep associated with each flying club and flight training organization. Just so there's somebody there, you know, that has maybe had some training around this and has worked with this subject area that people can reach out to. And then, you know, we talk about it being escalating, but it does happen. That's part of what we are here FAASTeam program managers. You know, we're not out to get anybody. We are purposely trying to be the ombudsmans for general aviation, and we can listen. Each of us has been involved in trying to mentor, help, guide, direct, sometimes even warn pilots about what the ramifications and results of their actions can be. You know, and I almost say this, I don't want to say the lost cause, but if you're just getting to the point that, you know, none of those things above can get through to the person, sometimes, you know, we got to go back to the Teddy Roosevelt thing of, you know, speak softly but carry a big stick. Sometimes the negative motivation of calling the FAASTeam or the FAA hotline may end up being the best result. That is usually only in the most extreme cases, but sometimes it is what is needed. And if you're not familiar with the FAA hotline, you can find it here at that website. You can put in items through the website. There's also a couple phone numbers associated with it. I just will emphasize it is for legitimate safety reasons, not for grudges. Probably each FAASTeam has dealt with a circumstance where, you know, say two people don't like each other and they just keep pinging things at each other. You know, every time you send something here, it is going to be followed up by the FAASTeam. It's going to be assigned. It's tracked by Washington, D.C. You know, there are going to be some results and ramifications for this, and it is not something, you know, to be used inappropriately. But if you do need to reach out to us about a distinctive safety issue that none of the other ways can resolve it, this is what you can do. So in the communication, if you are the one doing, oh,
Hey,
go ahead.
Stephen, I just want to add one quick thing. On that hotline, it can be anonymous if you choose to do so or not. It depends if you want to. I mean, just, you know, let folks know. I mean, you know, in the course of the investigation, people may figure out that you're the one that did it, but the FAA will not divulge that and do their best. You know, I just wanted to just mention that.
I got to remember to turn off mute. Yes, that is very, very true. It's a small enough industry that, you know, it could end up, you know, 2 and 2 get put together by somebody else and ultimately figure out who it is, but the FAA will not divulge it. And you get beyond this page here, and I think there's even a warning on it too, is they do say you can go ahead and do this anonymously. However, we do encourage you to provide us contact information, so forth and so on, for various reasons. One of which is, you know, we'll get back to you with the results. You know, is
Right. Yeah.
we found nothing.
Otherwise, you're not gonna find out the follow-up. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, in communicating this, you know, and this is one of the things we try to get across to the flight instructors out there. We talk even to the DPEs about it, is if you're the one communicating this to what I would call the rogue pilot for our circumstances tonight, is do try to do it as soon as you can, but not to be distracting and do it in an appropriate way. You know, being open and frank about it, you know, not necessarily telling them they were wrong, but, you know, do express it. Is, hey, how did the flight go? Was there anything that gave you concern about the flight? I'm asking because I saw something that, you know, I think from a safety perspective may be a concern, and I'm not sure if you recognize that. Also try to do it in an environment that works for them. We recommend don't do this type of discussion as a mentor, you know, as an instructor, as a DPE, as a safety rep, as a fellow pilot or whatever, out in the open or in a group. You know, face-to-face is best. You know, if you're able to see, a lot of communication takes place, you know, through nonverbal communication, how you end up looking, how you end up talking to someone. you know, it makes a big, big difference if you can do it. And we have technology like this today, Zoom meetings and everything else that you can see, and you can tell if someone's being genuine or not. You know, it's the worst thing to have, you know, the big frown and say, well, you did a good job today. And it's nobody, that's not going to work. And so as a result, we do want you, as much as possible, try to have that face-to-face. If you can't, maybe a video type of conference system that we've all learned to use lately works out well. A phone call works well. Email usually is at the lowest tier, only because the written word can be misconstrued so much. And as the person communicating, believe it or not, it's not about talking, it's about listening. Is ask about the flight and the situation, but listen. You'd be surprised how many people will tell you what the problem is and even know the solution to it, just at the time it wasn't readily available to them, that they just needed that person to be listening to them to work it out, you know, to bounce the idea off of, have some discussion about it. You know, they just need somebody to listen. They have the baseline knowledge. They just need to work it, I guess, at a little bit higher level with that. Do recognize too, if you're the one communicating, it's not about a similar circumstance you had or what you would do. You know, we all know as pilots, we have egos, you know, and it's hard as a pilot. I will attest this, you know, as a flight instructor, it's hard to say, well, what I would have done was, no, this isn't what that's about. It's what the other pilot did, could have done, should have done, and to help them recognize that. Some other things on the communication, you know, continuing on, this is a big one. We talk about this on the FAASTeam a lot, but just ask why. You know, why did you do that? Why did you think that? Why did you take that action? And if you're familiar with basic root cause analysis that we try to do in any accident investigation, we talk about the 5 whys, is try to be able to ask why 5 times. And that will usually bring you pretty close to what was the root cause of why something happened, whether it be a lack of knowledge, lack of education, you know, maybe a different orientation in terms of what the priorities were, and be understanding. You know, we all make mistakes, and, you know, you can almost make this statement is, yeah, we all make mistakes. And, you know, if, when I do, I want someone to point out my mistakes. It's just only going to make us better pilots. And, you know, I get out there, many of you know, I try to fly. I'm involved in general aviation, and my flying I try to use as my lab for the safety program. And I'm trying to do that to make myself better and to help you out. But I also know I'm gonna make mistakes when I do that. And I wanna know what it's like making those errors so I can correspond with general aviation pilots about that. You know, you can go out there and find people that are, yeah, I've seen Steve make that mistake, and it's true. And I've had people come up to me and say, why did you do that? And I appreciate that. It does help. That's what we all need to do. You know, and then sometimes it may help that, does it help to talk, but you're just not the right person. You know, if they might be uncomfortable with you in talking about it, be willing to let them talk to somebody else. And if you're on the receiving end of this, you know, be willing to listen, be willing to receive, be willing to talk. That will help, you know. And also understand that maybe a person approaching you has your best interests at heart, but we're all human. So try to listen for the message more than the method. Not everybody's going to approach things the same way. You know, I had the pleasure of working with somebody, you know, who is a fighter pilot for 25 years. And their methodology was arm lock torpedoes and fire, then look at what the target was. You know, completely different way of communicating. However, there were circumstances where he was able to communicate things much better than I ever was, and vice versa in other circumstances when we worked together, that I was able to communicate better than him. It all depended. Some people do work better with that method. So you take a look at some things that you may see out there that kind of make you go, what would you do? Or is that really the best thing to be doing? So we got a few different scenarios here. Just what we'd like to do is see what you have to say about them, and then have a little discussion amongst ourselves with you on what you had to say. I don't know how many people we got out here now. Yeah, we got 70 of you online right now, which is terrific. I just want to point that out as we go into the scenarios. And then let's look at scenario number 1 on the pitot cover. I'm going to give you 1 minute to read this here, only because the poll question that will pop up here by Rob in 1 moment may be worded slightly different, only because we're limited on the number of characters. But you want to go ahead and share this poll now, Rob?
Yes, Steve, I'll do it right now.
All right, this is the vote early, vote often type of thing. So,
Yeah, looks like we got 68% of you have
excellent.
voted, and it's rising.
Yep, please do, everybody. Yep. The more that votes, the more we know.
We're up to 79%, 82%.
Excellent.
Doing good, doing good. All right, do you want me to close it now, Steve?
Yeah.
We're at 85, 86%. All right, here we're going to close it. Okay, I'm going to share the results.
Yes. Excellent.
Looks like, go ahead. You want to talk about it, Steve?
Yeah, it's the big thing is we get almost everybody saying try to tell them on the radio, which I think is probably the first action that I definitely would agree with taking, just because it may be an immediate safety issue, and that might be the most expeditious way. What do all of you think?
Yeah, my opinion is, like you said, Steve, it's a safety issue. That definitely will affect their airspeed indication when they get up, start taking off. That's for sure. So I think that radio would be appropriate.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking is, you know, seeing the Cessna taxi out with the tow bar, you know, something like that, or you know, it's something that's affecting flight right away. And you know, if you know the person, you don't want to embarrass them, just make sure they don't take off. You can call them back and say, hey, come back, I need to talk to you. It's real important. But the primary thing is to stop them from taking off, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, you want it to be concise enough that they know, but you also don't want to embarrass them.
Yeah, if possible. But yeah, the primary thing is to stop them if you can safely.
I had myself on mute. This is a poster that we have within the Boston FAASTeam, and we have it as a reminder from the safety perspective. This is a Mooney that crashed, caught fire in relation to it. And you take a look, why did that happen? And it just was a simple skill set. You'll notice, you know, the pitot cover is still sitting there out there on the wing of the aircraft. It's just something simple like that. You know, and we have others. This was one that happened with a Gulfstream. This happened over in Europe. Soon after the Gulfstream accident we had in Bedford, Hanscom, but along the same lines of checklist usage and even systems awareness, is this crew started taxiing out and still had a pin in the nose gear for the steering and hydraulics. Had missed it in their checklists and all of that, and they jumped out of the aircraft with the engines running and pulled the pin, and the gear started to retract almost immediately. Let's take a look at another scenario here, Rob. You know, your daughter's boyfriend, we will talk about. You want to share this next poll question with everybody?
Hey, Rob, you're muted.
Thanks, Dan. I was just talking away with everybody. I didn't realize I wasn't being listened to. All right, so we've got 64% voted, 70%. We're doing good. 76%, and we're hitting that 80% threshold. So I am going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results. Here we go.
And I'll let you guys talk about this one. What do you think about the answers?
Well, Rob, I know you have a daughter, so.
Yeah, I for sure would choose answer number one. I'd say, Brittany, you're not going up with that pilot again. That would be number one priority. But then I would also approach him about it, talk to him about it.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things, I don't know if people have recognized that I do believe on all of these, I have it set that you can answer more than one answer, or you can answer with more than one selection on these, because sometimes there may be a few different things and it may be a little bit different. You know, how open is the relationship relates to the talk that you may have with them. But then you got to think about it too. And I'm going to share just an example of this. I'm going to hide these results here. In relation to that, I show that short little video because for anybody that even has done a basic introductory course in aerobatics recognizes that that was downright fairly ugly and was a terrific way to demonstrate an inadvertent split S that probably overstressed or was highly likely beyond the limits of the aircraft, whether it be in terms of velocity, speed, or in terms of G loading on the airframe. And this is one of the things I think to think about when you see these sort of things happening, is this very well may have an impact on the other pilots out there. You know, we see this shown on YouTube and all of that all the time now. And you know, it just really is. We have circumstances where aircraft break or fail because of what we would call the stupid pilot tricks, like this, where somebody is trying to accomplish something that they're not skilled at, don't necessarily know how to do it. So I almost would bring up, not only do you probably want to have a talk with him, you probably need to have a talk with the flight school that he gets the Cessna from and make them aware of what was done with the aircraft so they can inspect it, you know. And then even, I think some people are probably right. You've probably dealt with this, John, Dan, or Johns and Robert, where, you know, somebody has contacted you as the FAASTeam program manager to say, hey, we saw this going on with this flying club's aircraft or this flight school's aircraft before.
Yeah. Stephen, I love the scenario you had there, because it was something sent to you, you know, from someone's phone to your phone, because we're just seeing more and more accidents now where, you know, everybody wants to put it on social media or share it with their friends or whatever. So this is something that could, especially if you're a flight instructor, the enthusiasm of your students, you might get some pictures or emails that or text messages that might lead to a conversation, or however you decide best to handle it. So it's something that we're dealing with more and more.
Yeah, that's very true. Very, very true. Let's take a look at the next scenario here. Scenario number 3, the Cherokee 6 at the fence. We got this open, right, Rob? It looks like, where you see a Cherokee 6 at your airport occasionally, usually in the summer. They come in quickly on Friday with passengers and return on Sunday to pick them up, but they never shut down. You know, probably say dropping them off at the far end of the ramp, that sort of thing. What do you think about this? So like before, vote early, vote often. I don't know, Rob, if maybe you are saying a few things and maybe have your microphone on mute. I'm not 100% sure.
Yep, I'm back on. I was muted, Steve. Thank you. We got 54% voted, and we're climbing pretty fast now. %67% and climbing.
Excellent, excellent. I'll let you decide when to close it out, Rob.
We'll wait for a couple more seconds. We're at 71%, 73%. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to share the results.
All right, we get a pretty big split on this one, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because we get a lot of people thinking different things in relation to it. You know, each of us may handle this a little bit differently than the others. I myself, I probably would say, you know what, I'd probably talk first to the airport manager about it, only because, you know, if they're doing that, it's probably more so against the policies and procedures of the airport than it is anything else with it. But then again, I think on the screen, I don't know, yeah, but if they're doing it without ever shutting down the engine, boy, I probably would maybe try to catch them one day and talk to them or whatever. What do you guys think? Any other opinions?
Well, the not shutting the engine down and letting the passengers out just gives me nightmares. I think I'm traumatized for life. I unfortunately saw a dog once watch into a propeller. There's no, you know, it's just shut. It only takes a little longer to shut that engine down. I'd love to see them shut the engine down for starters. And that's interesting about the 134.5. I was so alarmed by the propeller that I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I hate to say, I've dealt with an accident or two of people walking into propellers. Some survived, some have not. And, you know, even there's so many videos now on the airports. We've had a couple scary events that we've had good video of it. Boy, I would agree with you. That's the one thing you don't want to do. That's a big club swinging around in front of the aircraft.
Yeah, passengers, they just, well, even there's been experienced aviation folks walking propellers, but especially passengers, they just don't think about it. They're excited to get their destination, and they step out on the right-hand side of, say, a Cessna 210, and it's just like they're in a car, and they see somebody, or they're headed for their car, and they just walk around the front of it, and they don't. So yeah, that definitely got my attention.
Yeah. And I'm going to hide this here, you know, because the one.
I would just, Steve, I just add to that. You know, I agree with what's been said, with what you had to say, and of course what Dan had to say. But that might be something too with that aspect of it, that safety aspect of it. They come every Friday, they drop people off, they keep the engine running. It's a regular thing. Hard to approach them, right? The engine's running. They're just going to leave. So it's hard to get near to intervene. And so I think that fourth choice about talking to a safety rep is a really good choice too, because what the safety rep's going to be able to do is work with the local FAASTeam program manager and actually look up the N number to that airplane, see who it's registered to, and maybe intervene, maybe make a phone call, get some contact information somehow. Maybe the pilot takes on gas at that airport. Well, if they keep the engine running, but make contact with the pilot as a safety rep, saying that they were made aware of something, and it alarmed them a little bit. They have an engine running while passengers are getting out, because anybody who's done this job long enough, like you guys, I've dealt with it too. I've had to deal with the aftermath of people walking in props, and it's just not pretty. It's just not pretty. Most people, it's fatal for most people. And those that do survive it usually survive it with some life-altering injuries. Really pretty dangerous. And that's what made my spidey sense tingle too when I looked at it.
Yeah. And, you know, this is one of those where, you know, some people may decide the best thing to do if you don't have a way to outreach to them is to call the hotline, especially for suspecting illegal charters, you know, what the industry calls jokingly 134.5 with it. But that is a special emphasis item right now for the FAA in relation to it. All right, let's go with scenario number 4 here about you're part of a flying club and you get to see one of the flying club aircraft out there doing touch and goes on the beach some days, say out on Cape Cod, or I don't know if with all the rocks on the Maine coast, I don't know if that happens up there too much, John, but I'm sure there's some terrific stretches of beach that people have thought about taking off and landing on in Maine. With it, why don't we go ahead? Let's share poll number 4, if we could.
There you go.
Excellent.
Would you try to catch them one day and talk to them? Would you try talk to the club safety officer, president, talk to your safety rep, talk to your FAASTeam program manager, or call the FAA hotline? Up over 50%.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
The faster you vote, the better.
75%. All right.
Excellent.
I'm going to count down.
Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We got 83%, 84% voted. Closing it. Okay, I'm going to share the results.
Yeah. And looks like everybody says going to talk to the club safety officer or club president in relation to it is what most people ended up putting. We had a few that did say call the FAA hotline with it. I kind of agree with talk to the club safety officer or president only because you don't know the person. it's much more likely that they do in relation to it. And I think that's part of an organization, is being in a position of responsibility like that. Automatically tries to put you in a position that you're going to try to be a mentor to all of your members. Do you agree, disagree, concur?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to talk to the club safety officer or president about it. It also is a great segue into talking about safety culture within the club, and
Yeah.
and whether the club is following any type of a kind, even if it's an ad hoc like safety management system. And one of the pillars to any SMS is non-punitive error reporting, and this would certainly be a beautiful example of that. So they landed on the beach, they took off again, they did some touch and goes, they made it back safely. So let's address this as a club, let's address this with the individual, and we're not going to punish them, but we're going to maybe institute some new policies. We're going to talk about it at our club meetings. We're going to bring in some FAASTeam program managers or some reps to talk about risk management at our club and for one of the safety meetings. I mean, you can really kind of expand on this and use it as an opportunity to really, enhance the safety message within that club.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I'd add, I agree with you, Stephen, about trying to get a FAASTeam rep in each airport. I'm gonna just put Northampton on the spot here a little bit. I know they set up a program at their airport where they have a safety hotline they set up themselves. So if people have safety concerns, they can put them in on the website anonymously if they want. And then they have I'm not sure exactly the process, but it's basically a mini SMS program, safety management system program of, okay, we're gonna go through these and see how we can mitigate the risk. And I know they try to handle it at the lowest level and go from there. So it can be done. And I totally agree with John that might be something to look at, individually, but then overall, the higher level view of the organization.
Yeah. I got a couple notes with this, with the different things, maybe to build on some of what both of you have said, also to look at some other things. I know a few people talked about calling the FAA hotline, but in reality, it probably is not looked at as being illegal or contrary to the regulations in the eyes of the FAA, other than things in terms of if there are people around, if it's deserted, careless and reckless, that sort of thing. Maybe looked at more so as like backcountry type flying, as long as there's nobody else around type of thing. But the big issue there is it's highly likely that the state or wildlife, fisheries, National Wildlife Service, all of that do have rules associated with it. So, calling the FAA hotline, you could, let me put it that way, get as a reply as, well, thank you for your concern. We've investigated and found nothing contrary to the regulations. Well, given that circumstance at that time, maybe it wasn't contrary to the FAA regulations, but it may have been contrary to the others. And, in an organization group, the culture thing is, if you don't know them, it's probably better to have someone of authority speak to them. But I'm going to leave you with a little tidbit to think about, because I have seen this in flying clubs before, where the response is, well, we're a flying club that provides the aircraft for our members. We don't regulate them. We don't want to deal with it. Well, that's a big safety culture statement and issue to be thinking about, as John was bringing up. And if you encounter that, boy, you might want to approach that a little bit differently.
And it's also, Steve, I'm sorry. I think we're talking on top of each other, Steve. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm good. You go ahead.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, if the club takes that type of attitude, one of the points that I think I would raise with the club was that it will be your issue if something happens, because the legal team that gets called in in that situation is going to make life difficult for the club. They're going to be liable from a legal perspective, and you know, they have to take that into consideration. If everything else fails, if they won't do it from a safety perspective, maybe from a self-defense perspective, because they're going to be legally responsible for whatever the club members do.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably, you know, in that scenario, as we're talking about it, you probably, the next step is to talk to one of us, one of the FAASTeam program managers, probably. That may be a little bit too tough to chew on for a safety rep in the local area, but, you know, sometimes you do need the authority banner, I guess, of the FAA to open up the conversation from the safety culture perspective. Last one here. Let's take a look at this one. You want to open this one up, Rob?
Sure, glad to. Sir, CFI, a regular DPE at the school, has a pure reputation. Student check ride and bad landing, not the student passes. Could you elaborate on this a little bit more, Steve?
Well, I had it up for a little bit here, but just this is a scenario. This was kind of a question, but you got a CFI and a DPE that's used regularly by the school that you're the CFI at. However, among the other flight instructors, the DPE doesn't have the best reputation in terms of how he interacts, he or she, I should say, interacts with the students, so forth and so on. And you actually have a student doing a check ride with them one day, and you're out there watching the landing, and from your perspective, you're looking at it going, ooh, that was pretty ugly, and you're kind of expecting the student to come back with a notice of disapproval, you know, but comes back and, well, has a certificate, and you kind of ask him about it, and says, well, that wasn't me flying, that was the DPE flying, wanted to show me how to do this, but said, you know, I wasn't really comfortable with that check ride anyways. You know, I know I'm working on my further ratings. I really don't want to do any more check rides with them. So what do you end up doing there? You know, and you have more than one option available to you.
Yes. Thank you for expanding on that a little bit, Steve. I know we're limited again by the number of characters we could put in the question, so that was real helpful. Well, we've got 63% voted as of now, and it's climbing pretty rapidly, up to over 70% now. So we'll wait about 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close it now. And I'm going to share the results.
Well, we have some variety, but talking to the flight school management is probably on the highest level there. I myself personally, I'd probably kind of do step one of deciding myself, I'm not gonna use the DP anymore, along with talking to the flight school management as first steps with it. You know, a DP is a contractor to the FAA. You as an instructor, you can use whatever DP you want. We even took off geographic limitations of designated pilot examiners with it. So you have a lot more available to you, even in your local area probably now than you have had in the past. But those are probably the two places I would start. Anybody else got anything to note?
Yeah, I personally, Steve, would, because a DPE is a representative of the FAA, he's acting on our behalf, I would talk to the FSDO. That's my opinion. So those that responded, the 28% that responded that way, my mindset sort of resonates with them.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing I want to add is, you know, we're throwing out these, they're basically ethical dilemmas. You know, we're throwing them out. There's not, the purpose of doing these, Steve and I talking, it's not to say this is what you do in this situation. You might start out with, maybe you start out with number 1 and it doesn't work. And maybe you'll start out, and then you go to number 4, or maybe you end up using all of them. You know, these are just to get you to think, you know, and every situation is going to be unique. sometimes there isn't a good one up there to pick, you know?
True.
Yeah. But I just want to throw that out. But yeah, I like the, I think I agree with Rob on this. I think I would go a little bit more towards the FSDO because a DP touches so many, you know, but like I say, it's a, you know, I understand there, you know, some of these select, there's going to be, you know, there might be a price to pay a little bit, maybe with, you know, maybe you'd have to get involved and maybe you don't want to, or vice versa. But it's, I think these are great things to think about. I think at the end of the day, I want to be able to know that you know, if something's unsafe, at the end of the day, whatever it takes, that I can feel like, you know, ethically, morally, that, you know, I've done my best, I guess.
No, that's all very true statements there. And, you know, each of us may approach it a little bit differently, which is a point to put out. I'm just going to add one quick thing to this because with some of my work, I've been approached by individuals where they've even expressed to me, more so in the past, we have a special branch now, and this really has kind of gone away quite a bit, but in many years ago, you may have seen this. But I've had people express to me maybe a special relationship with the FSDO and the DPE. And if you have that type of concern and maybe are not comfortable talking to the FSDO about the DPE, granted, I haven't seen any of this recently, but over the years it has been expressed to me. There is AFS 650, the designee delegation branch, which you can talk to directly also. They will listen to such an extent that the branch manager purposely has his direct email on their webpage in relation to this. You know, we have been working on making sure that every pilot examiner is held to the highest standards because they are basically out there to the public in looking as if they are a presentation of the FAA. The entire designee program really has been changing to create a higher standard, I guess is the way to describe it over the years, which is a terrific thing. And Dan, this is most everything you've been talking about here is all of this to recognize is ethical dilemmas. Sometimes, you know, what we're really focusing on is the least undesirable outcome, that there's maybe no great option out there, and each circumstance is different. And you highlighted it to us earlier, Dan, which was excellent, is sometimes maybe this communication, which we've been seeing more and more, may need to be a discussion with older pilots whose skills may be deteriorating. They may not necessarily recognize it, or pilots that may have an ego involved or something like that. All of those are things to consider. And what we're doing is just trying to provide you with some circumstances to start thinking about it. So as we close out here, we do want to thank you. You know, focus in on your proficiency, fly with your CFI, practice some, use the wings program. We've talked about it a lot, but you know, having a mentor, someone that can have this discussion with you in a friendly manner that you'll listen to, somebody that's been there, done that, you know, and can say, you know, hey son, let me tell you something. I've been there. You don't want to do this. Some other interesting things, if you're ever interested, I've read a lot of these individuals' work, which falls into kind of this category. Tony Kearns has a wide variety of books associated with airmanship, flight discipline. The Darker Shades of Blue is actually specifically on the rogue pilot. Actually, the flight discipline book in one organization I was involved with training, we used that when we had special circumstances develop. Actually, right here in the New England area is James Albright, Bedford Hanscom area. You might know his website, code7700.com. He also writes for Aviation Week, And in the last couple months, he actually has had some of his stories in the Aviation Week Network has kind of been focused around these CRM skills, these soft skills, and how important they are to professional aviation. You can find him along with Tony Kearns on Amazon and others, but if you are interested, I know they all have some terrific materials that you can learn a little bit more about this. We do want to thank you for attending here tonight. Like I said, we'll get the credits uploaded very soon, and we are looking forward to seeing you in person soon. So thank you, everyone.